sad week.
It's a sad week.
It's a hot week.
Yeah. This apparently is going to be a family episode of Big Acronym because there's nobody else here. And frankly, we don't care because...
I care.
More cookies for us.
Well,
Yeah.
that's one. And two, if we were home right now, we'd be cooking,
Yes.
like baking our bodies and not cookies because our air conditioner is turned off because we're crazy. We
Why did
decided,
you turn it off?
well,
We had
4 days ago,
we had a really cold week like 2 weeks ago.
yeah, there was a good cool week that like it rained and then there was like 3 or 4 days of like mid 60s. And it's like, okay, we don't need the air conditioning on now, so let's turn it off. And once you turn it off for that long, it's like you don't want to turn it back on. Like, no, we're in October now. Let's just commit to being AC off people for the rest of the year.
Bad
So
idea.
we're AC off people and we're sticking to our guns. Totally sticking.
Sticky.
To our guns. Yeah,
To
we're
everything.
sticking. Yes, we're sticking to everything.
We look forward to when the sun goes down.
Mhm.
Yes.
So because of that, it's us just spending as much time here as we can,
Yeah.
enjoying our family togetherness.
And it's air conditioning here, so that's good. That's good.
And we're going to do episode 5 of Standout for all 2 of you that might be watching.
Yeah.
I do have 1 episode up as of this time. There's another one edited and ready to upload, but I didn't have time to upload it before we came. So episode 3 will be online tonight, and then 4 should be shortly after that because 4 went pretty easily. 4 was, like everything worked the way it was supposed to work. So 4 we edited fast.
I think this one could be edited fast. It's just because like we didn't really have any technical issues. It was more participation
It is
issues.
participation issues, and I don't know if it's just because it's hot or if there are other things going on. That sounds like Bobby. There's somebody.
Bobby?
He's usually the late one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we know why Luke isn't coming
Yeah.
because he's moving, so they're getting something.
Yeah, and hi Lucas, if you're watching, we miss you.
Yo.
And I mean, we've heard from other people that are interested, but they need to see something before they'll be ready to be committed, and I just can't put stuff up for them to see. So hopefully that'll change. I don't know if anybody's listening to the conference because it doesn't tell me, I guess, if they're logged in and you're not connected to know. So if you're listening to the conference, you can unmute your phone now and say hi if you want.
I think Bobby's here.
There is nobody here.
Okay.
Oh, was you at the door?
What?
That was you at the door?
And nobody's saying hi on the conference, so I'm guessing nobody's listening. So we could totally just do whatever we want.
Yeah.
Let's just look at this guy's
We
face.
don't want to jump in the lake right now.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Let's
I
just
will.
break out the cookies.
We could.
I will.
We could eat cookies in the lake.
Yeah.
I will.
Well, why don't we
That
start
would
the
attract
video?
the leaders.
Okay.
I don't remember what our random fact was for last week. I saved it because we didn't use it. So hopefully that doesn't come up because.
Push the button.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
let's-
so far I mean,
Push the
last week
button.
it was close
One
enough.
off, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was like scripture or something, but we decided to like Nor just moved it.
Got a chance. It's got a chance now.
It's not gonna be push the button.
Wow. And of course it is. It's green.
He wants to spin again.
Nora, why don't you give me my book bag over there? I think it's in there.
We could spin again.
No, we're not going to. I just can't remember the fact. I know I told you the
Come on,
stamp one.
fact courts, you're trying to work.
Fact core is still offline. I checked again this afternoon.
Well,
And
Today, Dad recorded the button, so it's gonna be really good.
I did. You're right. And
push the button.
we're not going to push it just yet. We will definitely push it before.
Is it good?
Okay.
Is it good?
The only 15-letter, non-repeated letter word in the English language. Okay.
What?
So it's 15 letters long.
But none of them like
and
repeats.
none of them are repeats. Is
Whoa.
uncopyrightable. There are no other 15-letter words in the English language that are non-repeating letters. How about that?
Uncopyrighted.
How about that?
about that?
Uncopyrightable.
How often would you use that word?
People like me.
Never.
Nothing that we're doing in this podcast is uncopyrightable. Wait, everything that we're doing in this podcast is uncopyrightable. Because,
Even this guy.
well, I guess there are some things that are, never mind. That uncopyrightable cannot be used as a sentence to describe this episode of Standout.
No.
Do you want to push the button? Does that
Well,
excite
first off,
you, or you want to wait?
speaking of copyright, obviously since Nintendo loves to copyright anything and everything that they can that's related to Nintendo, and apparently you have to have some sort of license. Apparently, they've copyrighted that like half a second click noise the Switch makes. They've like it's in the commercials. They've copyrighted that. So if you have that in a video, boom, they're copyrighting you.
I wonder how they make it distinctively theirs, like how you know
Yeah,
it's
like
theirs.
that's when I heard about that. I was thinking like, how do you copyright a click noise?
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started on some things here. You're one to push it. I know
I
you
am
are.
on shit.
Go ahead.
Pandas a bunch of times in a weird accent. Wonder how we're gonna work that into something.
That's definitely uncopyrightable.
Yeah. Watch it, watch it. DreamWorks copyrights you.
Moving on.
Watch it. DreamWorks copyrights you.
Alright. So, this guy
He's dead.
No, he is not dead.
Whoa, really?
This
Say
guy is
what?
back. This guy is back. And what? You're shocked by the fact that he's not dead because it's a black and white picture
Yes.
that everybody in black
This is
and white
probably
is
a
dead.
recent.
Exactly.
That was taken 4 days ago, I think, or was posted.
So
4 days
I'm
ago.
dead?
I'm sure the guy from I'm sure the narrator guy from Twilight Twilight Zone is dead.
Rod Serling.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's also the creator of the Twilight Zone. Yes, he's
Huh.
dead.
Huh. Talk about low budget.
Yeah, he was my age in like the 60s. So this
No.
this guy was just on the news yesterday. He just put out a new album.
Oh, new album.
Oh.
What was it called? The Black and White Blues?
It's a
I
soul.
think I know what it's called.
It is
You're
black and
close.
white. It is black and
I
white.
thought it was Al Pacino.
It looks a tiny bit like a young Al Pacino.
But it's
Steve.
that that was on this morning.
Mhm.
Probably got
Steve
Eve Jobs.
Perry,
Steve
What
Miller.
group was we with though?
Journey.
Journey, okay.
This was the lead singer from Journey. And you're done. This is the lead singer from Journey. And he's going to come up quite frequently in today's episode. So the scripture for today is just this one verse.
Pendas.
Just this one verse is the scripture. But because of this one verse, the way it's written, we're going to have to look at other verses from the same section to answer the questions from this one verse. So this verse is 1 Peter 3, verse 19. That's all it is right there. That's the entire verse. Who's going to read
pretty
that
short.
out?
Oh, shoot.
Read it. Yeah.
After being made alive, D, he went and made, don't tell me, proclamation.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
To the imprisoned
Oh,
spirits.
imprisoned. So close. After being made alive, he went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits. Yeah. So, okay.
Stop, it's really loud.
So proclamation would be proclaiming something. And so now we have to ask a lot of questions based on that. Or do you have that whole scripture up right now? Is that what you've got?
I just have 3 pages.
Okay.
And then do just 3.
There's the Bible over there if you want to grab it, Nora. You want to grab it?
It's all the way over there.
So this whole section would begin like in verse 8 and go through verse 22, and it's called Suffering for Doing Good. And this is kind of the beefiest verse because it has the most connotations in it and the most questions in it. First of those questions being the easiest one: who is he?
I don't know where I'm looking.
Can your clicker thing go back? Okay. I would say it would be God, but it's not capitalized, so.
Okay, that's one good thing. If you had the Bible, which was over there, it's not over there?
Guess not.
All right. If you had a Bible, you could look at the verses before and after, My computer still has Bible Gateway open on it if you want to bring my laptop over.
Yeah,
But
when it's your
I
turn.
think,
It's like,
This, so it's Christ.
yes.
Well, we're waiting.
What?
We can
Shh,
we're
Nora.
waiting.
To be
You get, if you've got support for your answer, then read the answer.
For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring
I think it's
to
dead.
God. He was put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit. After being made alive, he went and made a proclamation to his own spirit.
Right.
So, Christ.
Right, so Jesus he was put to death bodily, but then made alive in spirit, it says. So the answer to who is he
It's Christ.
is Jesus Christ. He is the one who was made alive
Yeah.
based on the scripture, the lines that come right before that. That's the easiest part to answer. The next part,
So why is it not? I thought, so they don't capitalize he for Christ,
No.
it's just God.
no, and that comes from, well, it's a little perspective, but in the original text, there is only one name of God. Like there's like the Hebrew consonants that were used to be the name of God were like this is what we're saying. Yod He Vav He YHWH is the name of God. And whenever you see those in Scripture, it says Lord in all capital letters. Like that's how you know that word was translated into Lord from the original name of God. And then so you have to make the pronoun that's referring to that's got to be capital.
Right.
Like there's no way you couldn't do that. So how was he made alive? Anyways?
I'd say at the crucifixion because I know that means that, that's, they're killing him. But then again, that's the reason he was reborn. That's how he was made alive, by being killed, so that way he could be made alive again.
Good start.
Right.
Build on that.
What?
I know how he stayed alive. He lived on fluffer letters.
Doubt it. Really doubt it. Peanut butter wasn't even invented until like
Wait, that's a peanut butter?
the 1900s.
What's a fluffer nutter?
Well, there's peanut butter and fluff nutter. Can we go back to this, please?
Yes. No fluffer
So
nutters.
the scripture that what Peter says that Jesus was made alive, he said he was made alive in spirit. So is he physically referring to him dying and then coming back to life? And since we don't have the Bible for you to really study it, and I don't have the way to put the scripture up on this little
And
graphic.
locked out of your computer.
Is it locked out?
Yeah, you can put in your pin.
Oh,
He went and made proclamation to those who were disobedient while on the way to God.
no, even before that. Like, this is a question for you to give your opinion on as to if he's not specifically saying body alive, because he makes a separation that he was dead. in-
He was made alive in spirit.
Right.
So that's how the Holy Spirit became.
Dead air. There's been a wheel that morning. Mom's thinking of an answer. Oh my goodness. You've never seen.
I've never seen any superhero movies.
Yeah, you said that last week. There's a whole bunch of scary movies that are out right now because
Like
it's scary.
Slenderman.
I've never seen any of the Friday the 13th or Friday.
I've never seen
any
it.
of those, and I don't ever want to.
I've only seen one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and maybe half of Friday the 13th.
Or Halloween.
I've seen like one Halloween. Yeah, I never got into the serial ones, but I like the Saul stuff, the new ones. I like those.
I know what I could say.
What?
I've never seen it.
I've never seen most of the Stranger Things series.
Yeah, you need to watch that.
I've never
Is
seen
it okay to
it.
watch?
Most of it, it's like 80%. I mean, there's some situational
Yeah,
things.
it was
in
it was
but-
episode 1 that like that's where I stopped watching.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll get back to that. So, did you get this open?
So what am I looking for?
Go to the Bible Gateway tab on Chrome that's open. It has the scripture. I have 3 different tabs open.
It looks like no one else is going to join this call. Goodbye.
Okay, so we have no one else joining us. Goodbye.
Wait, was that someone else who said goodbye? Was that?
That was the host of the conference saying that no one else joined.
And then who said goodbye?
It's the
Oh,
host.
okay.
That's like the automated thing.
So which Bible Gateway one?
There's 2 tabs.
Yeah.
One has just NIV and one of them has a parallel between the message.
Yeah, I see that.
So
So we're not on the NIV.
you could look at any of those 3 and look down around verse 18, chapter 3, 18, verse 17, and kind of get your own opinion as to what you think Peter specifically is talking about, or how he's describing it.
For it is better if it is God's will to suffer for doing good than for doing evil. That's 17.
Keep reading.
18. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. He was put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit.
It's the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
I think it's pandas.
Okay. But how does that move forward? He's put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit. What does that benefit to anybody in any way by itself? And how does that relate to suffering?
Well, Jesus can't be here on earth with us now, but he sent the Holy Spirit to be with us.
Okay. That's fine. Sure.
I think
That's
it's-
fine. That's fine.
It's not.
Yeah, it is. It's fine. So,
Oh, it's still me? Okay.
It might, that's true. Since Jesus is not here on earth with us anymore, he sent the Holy Spirit to be with us, to protect us, to be our connection.
okay, what's the suffering stuff that's before that? He's tying in everything that's happened in the first 2 chapters already, talking about suffering for doing good and respect to people in authority and all of those types of things. And then he talks about the type of suffering that Jesus endures. Like he segues from all of that to the suffering that Jesus endures, and that was the greatest level of suffering because he had done no wrong. Right?
Mhm.
That's
The
written
right,
in
he
there.
was righteous.
Yes. So he has done no wrong. He's suffering. He is the most prime example of what Peter is trying to explain. And he's saying that through Jesus' suffering, his body is dead, and then his spirit is made alive for the good of this whole thing. So, like, how can you compare that? Can you give any example, any thought of how to compare something, a spirit being made alive in a world that is doing nothing but bad, like that it's bringing life in spirit to a world that deserves suffering? Can you think of any examples of that? Owen? It's gonna be a really quiet
I
discussion
know.
if you don't say stuff. 'Cause-
So we're trying to find an example of
Church.
what?
what?
There are a bunch of babies crying, but God comes there.
There are babies crying in
Yes.
church? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I would suggest then, fine, that this guy
I'm trying to think.
is an example of that.
I don't even know this person.
I
I'm
know.
supposed to
We
know.
don't know this person, but this guy is an example of a spirit of new life coming to a people who have suffered, and in a way that involves him sort of dying and coming back to life in spirit. Third question would be, where did he go? He being Jesus, where did he go?
I feel like he went to heaven, like the 3 days thing, like he rose after 3 days. I think that was like, him in those 3 days, that was him ascending to heaven. And then while he's in heaven, God informs him that your work on earth is not done, and he can.
Do you have proof of that somewhere?
No,
See
it's
that
just
written
something
somewhere?
that I think that could be.
What does verse 19 say? Because that's what the question's asking. Where did he go in verse 19? This entire podcast is about
Sorry.
verse 19.
The imprisoned spirits.
He went to them.
To save them, like he went to the other dead people.
Is that what it means?
Well, I think when it says imprisoned spirits, that could mean like imprisoned in their own bodies, trapped for all eternity, not like the dead.
Okay.
And so he's going to these imprisoned
Where are the
spirits
dead people?
in other tombs.
So his physical body is going into tombs and talking to other physical dead bodies? Or are you picturing in spirit form
In spirit form,
that the spirits are just staying with their bodies? Like,
yeah, that's
when
what,
they
like they're
die?
imprisoned inside their bodies because they can't ascend or descend. They're just trapped. in
where would they
prison.
ascend or descend to?
Well,
This is really difficult stuff. That's
It
why
is.
it's only one verse that we're discussing.
that's why I'm
And it would be
trying.
great if there were other people here to discuss it, because it's a wonderful thing to get opinions about, because nobody knows this for sure.
I'm
There's
just
a
giving
lot
my
of different
opinion on
debates
it.
about where he
Just
went.
give my opinion about how they'd be trapped, imprisoned in their own bodies. There's they actually have nowhere to go, so they're just trapped there. And
Okay.
then
I can put your
Jesus
picture.
comes in with spirit form to inform them that there is another life, there is another place for them that's better than being imprisoned inside of their own bodies.
If he hadn't come, would they just stay for eternity stuck in a body, just staring at a dark rock wall?
I don't even think they'd see that. I think they'd just see darkness.
Okay.
Because if they could.
There's no wrong answer.
Yeah, I just think that they would see nothing but darkness if their soul is trapped inside their body. I don't think your eyes would work. I think it would just be your own spirit just constantly trapped.
And do you picture this now, that everyone endures this? Or?
If you're, I think back then they did because there wasn't really much of religion to begin with. Well,
There was plenty of religion.
yeah, but, there wasn't really definite.
The,
yeah.
the Jewish people didn't specifically believe in an afterlife. So,
Yeah.
to them, it may have been something like that for sure.
So is this imprisoned spirits? So it could it be imprisoned spirits of alive people?
Mhm.
It could be their spirit.
What else around that scripture supports that?
They're constantly trapped in faithful.
And what's the proclamation? It says he made proclamation to.
Right.
What is the proclamation? Just that he is Christ and he died and he's risen.
What does the New King James Version say in that parallel version, the parallel tab?
Verse 19, right? So actually,
It would be the one on the left side,
Okay.
I think.
By whom also he went and preached to the spirits in prison.
Preached.
Yes. The NIV uses proclaimed, or proclamation, but most of the other versions say preached. That he's delivering a message of salvation.
Okay.
Does that change where you go with it?
It kind of defines more of what
Yeah.
it would look. I mean, because when it just says proclamation of what? I mean, you assume that it's a proclamation of salvation, or,
Right.
but.
So if he's going and preaching, he's preaching to people that need to be preached to. So you would be led to believe that he's preaching to people who have already been lost. If they're imprisoned spirits that have already passed on, then they're people that are already lost. That's the direction that most scholars end up going with it.
It's people that have passed on already.
It's he descended to hell, basically, is what there are a lot of scholars that, I mean, there's no written in the Gospels, there's nothing that says that specifically like that, but there are other texts that make inferences like that for 3 days he was, not only did he suffer bodily death, but he suffered in hell, like that he entered hell and proclaimed the message
And gave them a chance.
something like that, yeah.
Of salvation.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally open to discussion,
Yeah.
and that's why I wish there were people here to discuss it.
Well, maybe people will comment.
Maybe they will. That'd be great.
Maybe I could go grab my phone and I could call Lucas.
And then, so what did he say? The answer being, depending on how you look at it, but pretty much it's going to be a message of, I have endured the suffering. I have taken this pain for the sins of the world, and I think you would also be able to argue in that he's saying that that's open for past, present, and future.
Yeah.
Allowing for anyone in the past, if you are to accept that line of all people die, they all enter a place where they've been judged, and then they can return from that or make a decision from that, or, I mean, in some cases, I mean, like, based on sort of like his angle, there would be no specific location or whatever that they could just be trapped where they are, and I mean, there's no way to know for sure, but I think we're led to believe from our understanding of things that's the direction. But I mean, like, I'm totally open to all theories, and I'd love to hear some really cool theories, because there's a lot of different ways you can interpret this one verse.
Yeah.
And maybe someone watching will make a comment on it, because that
He
would
was
be great.
trapped in Subway for 3 days.
Maybe. So let's go on then to our halfway haiku, because
Don't
it's time to
stop
take our cookie
believing.
break. This is a halfway haiku written by somebody on Instagram, and I can't see all of it. If you want to read that.
She's always looking for signs. This one caught her eye. Don't stop believing.
Isn't that precious?
I assume this wasn't. I
Oh,
assume this.
Nora's singing.
I assume copyright. That's the only thing that's not copyrighted.
Well, we're going to talk about that song when we come back from the break. So now it's time for the break.
And you were missing out.
We will come back after we eat some cookies and finish this up. We're back from our cookie break, and we had an email from one person that was trying to connect to the voice chat and couldn't because Google kicked us out, which you would have heard if you were listening on this thing, on the regular broadcast, but nobody would know that now because that's in the past for the time. Never mind.
I just realized that I probably.
Sorry.
I just realized that I probably should be plugging in like the microphone cord thing into my phone.
No, it never worked right anyway. So we tried it again. I've got it up and running, but nobody's on there right now. We'll see what happens with that. But for now, we're going to get back to our stuff. So this is the 80s. That guy with the black leather jacket,
Which one?
that guy right there,
Okay.
that's the same guy from the black and white picture.
I don't believe you.
It is.
It is.
You're going to have to trust me on that.
Yeah.
This is the band Journey, and this is the 80s. Like, this is what the 80s were. Just like...
The 80s was a journey.
Yeah, it was. It was all a journey. The 80s were a lot of this, like, free, big-haired, rock ballad kind of music things. And these guys were right at the center of that. And so they wrote the song Don't Stop Believin', and he's the singer that was the lyricist for Don't Stop Believin'. He and two of the other guys started with the chorus and worked their way backwards, putting together a whole song, which if you consider Don't Stop Believin' to be the chorus, it's a really horribly written song because they don't say that until the very end of the song. But I think most people would agree that the chorus is actually the strangers and the streetlight people, all that part. But it became a hit for them the first time around for a short lived. It was just a regular song, and it was like everything else. It had its time, and it was a great '80s rock ballad. And then came the '90s, and these are the bands of the '90s. And this was an era of grunge and rebellion and punk and not caring about things and just raising your fist in the air and being like down with the man and I'm gonna do whatever I want to do and I'm gonna let myself go and I'm just gonna be crazy. And they would jump into the crowds and they would smash things. They would.
No happiness in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it was not happy. It was a different kind of feel. So bands from the 80s just sort of disappeared. Like the emotion and the feeling behind the 80s was lost because the 90s generation treated the 80s like they were disgusting. Like the 80s were too foo-foo, frilly, big hair fun, and the 90s were all grungy and rocky and edgy, and there was a major separation between the two. That was the 90s, okay? So songs like Don't Stop Believin' disappeared in the 90s. No one knew about those songs by the 90s. And the guy from the picture that we were talking about, he left the band in 1987 before this even happened. So totally lost from this generation. This generation would have not even thought of Don't Stop Believin'. And then in 1998, this movie comes out. Do you know what that movie is?
Is that Adam Sandler?
That is Adam Sandler.
It looks like Michael Jackson. His hair looks like Michael.
Well, okay, he's supposed to be playing a role from that generation, from that era. This movie
The Wedding Singer.
is The Wedding Singer, good job, was meant to be about the mid-'80s. This movie was all about things that happened in the '80s, but it took place in 1998, okay? In this movie, there's a scene where they're at a wedding, and there's a string quartet playing Don't Stop Believin' in string quartet form. And nobody had ever heard that version of it before. But they brought it back in this like fun, yet really classical orchestral sound, Don't Stop Believin'. And I'm pretty sure it was the Vitamin String Quartet, or at least the same arrangement that the Vitamin String Quartet does. So this was the first time that it came back where people from the 90s were saying, you know what, the 90s are almost over, it's been long enough, let's start believing again. Let's bring back that fun 80s feel, because it's fun to feel the 80s, and that's why this movie was such a big deal, was it was like, hey, this is all the fun stuff from the 80s. Remember the 80s? They were fun. Forget the 90s, forget all the grunge stuff. Let's be fun again.
Yeah, if only they could see the
Because, well, I
future.
mean, to be grunge, you kind of have to be in a bad mood to
Yeah,
go to it.
totally.
It's depressed.
Yeah, it was meant to be depressing.
Yeah.
And most of those guys now are just gone because they got so depressed
Yeah.
by it that they're gone. I don't want to say how they're gone, but they're gone.
They just had, at the end of the 1900s, like, you know what, let's have some fun. If only they could see
Yeah.
into the future and see how bad things might get.
And I mean, I guess that there are ways like this, but what ends up happening, this begins the cycle of resurrection, of making alive in spirit the song Don't Stop Believin'. In 2003, this show,
Scrubs.
which is Scrubs, featured the song in an episode where they were talking about things that made you feel good and they were bringing together this like ultimate feeling that you would only get from singing the song "Don't Stop Believin'." And in this episode, they create a montage where they have a person that takes a midnight train going anywhere, and like they make the song into a video. That's a different song. But so Scrubs, 5 years later, keeps it still fresh and in the forefront and makes you think, okay, this is something that we should keep talking about and having fun with because it was a great feel-good song. Let's not forget the song. And then in 2007, this show, do you know what this show is?
No.
The black, the white, and the ugly.
I don't know what.
This was a show on HBO called The Sopranos.
I was close enough.
The Sopranos was a really big deal. It was one of the first. It was one of the first TV series shows that HBO had that really had like a diehard following. People like they wanted everything they could about The Sopranos. But The Sopranos, the last episode of The Sopranos, ends with this song. Like the last scene of the movie, they start playing "Don't Stop Believin'" and it's in a restaurant.
Thanks for the show.
I'm sorry, the last scene of the show, the last episode, the last scene of the last episode. They're playing "Don't Stop Believin'" and they get to the chorus and this girl walks into the restaurant and like you can tell that it's like the realization of something great happening, and then "Don't stop," and then it stops. The whole show just goes to black and they go to credits. They don't end the song, they don't end the scene, you just make inferences and that's it. But they leave you thinking about that song, 5 years later after the last time, and it's keeping it fresh, keeping people talking about it. And then just another 2 or 3 years after that, this group, you know what this show is?
No.
It looks familiar.
Glee.
That's Glee.
Glee.
That's
The
why.
cast of Glee did their version of "Don't Stop Believin'," which
Oh,
made
that's
it
probably what-
explode.
Yeah, that's what totally made it.
Right, but they wouldn't have done that if it hadn't been staying, like, people weren't reminded of it every couple of years, like, hey, this is still a good, fun, feel-good song to remind us of a better time of happiness and not grunginess. It's fine, Owen, it's fine. So when Glee does it, they recorded it and they released the song for sale, their version of the song. So there was the Glee version of the song and then there was the original Journey version of the song. And at one point in 2010, in the Billboard charts, they were like numbers 5 and 6 together in the charts. The people who bought the Glee version also bought the
They
Journey
wanted to
version.
hear
They wanted to hear the
original.
original again. Which that alone probably made more sales in the original first 2 or 3 years of Journey's record sales in the 80s.
So in other words, it's like art because it becomes more, valuable after the person is gone.
Well, they're not even gone. I mean, like,
Wait, the band is not
the band's still,
together.
they're,
Do you think?
well, I mean, with bands, you have an entity name as like a business where people can come in and out. And you still have the name Journey, but you may not have all the original members, but they'll still go out and do stuff. And they continue to do stuff without Steve Perry, but the original songwriters and recorders of the song that was produced into an album are the ones that get the royalties for the sales. Like the current members of the band wouldn't get shares of those record sales. They can still play the songs that are in the band's catalog, but they wouldn't get a cut of it. They would get ticket sales and stuff, but that's it. So anyway, so this is what really brought it back to life to where now it's kind of evergreen. Do you know what evergreen means? If something is evergreen, it means it's bridged the gap of losing popularity. Like it's so in the mainstream zeitgeist that it doesn't go away. Like it's just a part of us now, to where we can't forget about it and it can't go away. It's just evergreen. Like an evergreen tree never loses its needles. It's just always green. So "Don't Stop Believin'" has now reached that status because of Glee.
Did you even watch Glee?
No, gosh, no. Can't say
Okay.
And so here's Steve Perry today, the guy that wrote "Don't Stop Believin'," because from the 1980s till now, people kept revisiting and making alive the song "Don't Stop Believin'." He never became one of those guys that's just like, oh man, I was great in the 80s. Remember that one thing I did in the 80s? because there was so much spirit to the original song, and how that song epitomized the feel-goodness of the 80s and just the feel-goodness of life. Don't stop believing. It's a great theme. Don't stop believing. Because that never went away, and because they focused so hard on that people would want to remember it later, past the 90s when we're not wanting to be depressed about stuff anymore, we have this new era of let's love life and don't stop believing and think positive, and he's encouraged to get back out and do music again. And it's not for the money, it's not for any kind of reward from that, it's just, hey, I can do this, I'm gonna do music
I'm
again.
gonna believe.
Well, I know this morning when they were doing that interview with him, like she asked him, it was before I realized he was back singing. She asked him if he ever missed it, or something to like that, and he said no.
Mhm.
Like during that whole 20 years or whatever it was, and he hasn't even sang, he never missed it.
Mm.
So then later when they started talking about him singing, but what was the catalyst that got him back into it? Was it a child or something?
He had some loss.
Yeah, there was something that kind of,
He
decided to use, his music was his therapy. To kind of-
He suffered some family loss and separation, and he was using that as his impetus and his muse for writing again.
And is this, and because his name is Rick, is this the Rickroll thing?
No, it's
Is
not
that
Rick,
no.
it's Steve. His name is Steve.
Steve, oh. Okay.
Rick Roll is Rick Astley.
Yeah.
Everybody give
With
him
it.
up.
Oh, okay. I know, they sing all
You could be
those songs.
Steve Roll, that would be totally
Yeah.
different.
I mean, seriously, this song did get a 2-verse non-copyright version called Don't Start Unbelieving. So,
Oh, good. Hunter's on, he's singing the lyrics to it now. Awesome. Thanks, Les. Got him
Don't
started.
start.
No, he's singing Rick Astley's song.
Sorry.
So I think that's it. Can you see the bridge between the scripture from verse 19 of being made alive in spirit and Steve Perry and Don't Stop Believin'? Can you make that connection?
Kind of.
Kind of.
Kind of. Like,
Yeah, I mean, like,
I
he
think
was
I can-
there, and then people have kept the spirit of the song alive,
Mm.
which connects him
Mhm.
Yeah.
throughout the years.
And
I guess.
that particular song was kept alive because it was sung with such intensity and such passion and so well written
That they believed it.
They just
got
They
stuck in your
believed
head.
in it, yeah.
that it was enough to stick for later for people to resurrect and say, you know
Yeah.
what, this was worth talking about. Which is the same thing that's happened with the Spirit of Jesus, that his message that he descended into wherever he descended to, he was made alive in the Spirit that kept through all the generations of depression and separation and people forgetting about the gospel. It was still such a strong message for those handful of people that took it in, that they were able to keep it alive for generations beyond, to where now it's evergreen. Like, that can't go away now, it's evergreen.
Yeah.
And we can do the same thing with whatever we want. That if we were to put Steve Perry quality effort into the things of our lives, not just the podcast, but just anything in your life, think of just in your day, there could be something that you do that you don't think anything of, but if you did it with such intensity and fervor and quality that you want it to be the best thing ever for you, for the people around you to hear and see, whatever, then maybe someday people will be like, oh man, that was really cool, that thing you said that one time, remember that? And then they repeat it, and then they share it, and then someone else repeats it and reshares it, and it builds, even though something you didn't even think would ever become anything, it gets made alive again in spirit and becomes evergreen to the world in the future.
And I'm gonna make a connection that I don't know if it's like, it might be a weird connection, but with like when I start speaking, both of you turn on your phones.
I'm just
No,
making sure.
I was just
Okay. I like how it's gonna be kind of a weird connection, but I'm gonna connect it to like memes about nursery, like old nursery rhymes. Like for example, the baby shark thing. Like that was just
It's
some.
not a nursery rhyme.
Whatever.
We've already talked about
Whatever. Okay, that was just
yes.
a
No,
like,
okay, yeah.
old song that like they made and they didn't really think much of it, and now it's like one of the biggest, most talked about memes that's been used. Or the nursery rhyme Johnny Johnny, which was never really a popular thing to begin with, which is a thing that kind of got put out, and over the years it got extremely popular, and now it's like being talked about and being shared all across the internet. So it's sort of my connection to it.
Okay.
And
it can happen with anything.
like if I were to if I were to make a YouTube video and I I did something that I thought was pretty cool or something like that, put effort into. And it just kind of got unnoticed, but then in the future, Mike got brought up like, oh yeah, that was kind of cool.
If
Then
one
it-
part about it was really well done or like had a great point to it that people could relate to later, it could happen.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't created it, and it wouldn't have happened necessarily if you hadn't put the right amount of intensity into it for it to be something to reshare.
Geez, that chair's squeaky.
It is. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I think we covered most of the points.
You think so?
Yeah.
So I know Hunter is listening now on Discord. I think Lucas was. I'm not looking at the chat to see, but
I can look at the chat to see.
Gangnam Style is evergreen. Yeah. I don't know.
Oh no, he's singing Baby Shark now.
Hunter is also wanting to know who's in the room. It's just our family because no one else showed up. But we still did this because we're cool like that. And this room is cool like that because it's air conditioned.
Well,
It's our house.
I'm gonna read. No, stop. I'm going to read the second message, the third message, and the fourth message.
From Hunter?
Mm-hmm. We're no strangers to love. You know the rules, and so do I.
Who is present if you don't mind?
Me asking, baby.
Is the one member of the journey, it looks like Maya Rudolph.
It's Maya Rudolph. It totally is.
It looks like.
I have no idea what you're talking
What do you mean? Like your nose is red?
No, can you go back to
about.
it?
It would. Nora.
That's a cool remote.
Nora.
I didn't know you had a clicker.
Yeah, but I can't jump straight to the one I want. I gotta go all the way back.
Oh,
Is it just doing those dissolve on its own, or do you?
Yeah, it's picking in random transitions in between, because these are all just graphics, and it's just picking its own transition for it,
Oh.
like a slideshow.
Doesn't that look like Maya Rudolph?
Yeah, it does a little bit.
I don't know who.
It also looks a lot like the guy who played the hall monitor in the episode of Saved by the Bell, where they had a hall monitor, and Screech becomes the hall monitor in replacement of this guy. Looks a lot like that too. But it's not either of those people.
The hair is interesting.
It is. It's very interesting.
He ugly.
I forgot which is which, but I think
I mean, like, those are the kind of hairstyles that men and women had. Like,
Yes.
it's not, it wasn't.
Especially the guy down below. Like that was like a 70s woman haircut.
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know if this is. I don't remember which is which, but I think the guy all the way on the right, he looks like Bill or Ted. I forgot which one was which. The one that kind of had the longer hair.
Yeah, I don't know.
Was that Bill or Ted?
Hunter wants us to spin the wheel. And we've only done it like twice.
Can I spin the wheel this time?
Go for it, Owen. Spin the wheel.
I'm Owen White. Here we go. Shout
out. Well, we have
two people.
Hunter and we had Lucas was listening, right? Or
Yeah,
is
he's
he-
still listening.
Is he on there? Hi, Lucas.
Shout out to Lucas. Shout out to Hunter.
And to Rachel. Rachel was listening through the Google Meet audio conference of
He
it,
left.
which right now is actually live video. You can actually see us live in video if you're looking at Google Meet.
I say we spin again.
But we're gonna shut this down in just a second, so there's not much reason to join into it. You want to spin one more time?
Sure. So we didn't spin the wheel much
We
today.
haven't done word association.
Yeah, so I kind of hope the answer word association.
If it does, it does.
Come on, word association. Yeah, it's not word. Oh,
It is not.
or maybe it is. No, it's not powerful enough.
Compliment.
Thanks for the cookies, Mom.
Those were
Yeah.
Those were the best chocolate chip cookies.
You've ever made.
I wouldn't say ever, but okay, they were the closest to my mom's, and that
Aww.
that's a big.
Are you
deal.
comparing your wife to your mother?
But I don't,
Cookie wise,
the way
yes.
that they were good, but they flattened out too much. But I think it's
I
just
think
it's
that
so
might
hot
have
to our
made I think that
house.
might have made him better. Cause like it made it like maybe I don't know.
Hunter, there's a link on the Big Acronym Facebook post that shows the button to click on, like how to join in to see the video live. Which, because the internet is working right now here, we're not sure why it's working right now, but it wasn't before, but for now we're taking advantage of it. If you're live right now, you can see both of my children flossing.
Nor's not
No,
flossing.
Nora's not
You
flossing,
can
she
see
was.
Owen flossing.
You can see Owen flossing.
He's
But-
got like a
Hey,
pillow
bro.
over his head.
Hey, bro, I want to get in
So-
on this.
Yeah, we didn't have an HDMI cable, somebody stole it from the internet. Okay. We had to copy all the images onto a flash drive and stick it in the TV, but we made it do, so.
So yeah, shout out
You
to
got-
the flash drive.
Got all the questions answered. I don't even remember what the last word was to do the word association.
Oh.
I always forget what the last one was.
I think it was
We
grilled.
started with grilled.
So it was grilled.
Chicken.
Does anybody
It was-
remember listening?
It was grilled cheese and then
Yeah.
Was oh,
I am a dinosaur.
blue,
blue?
Blue.
blue, the color blue.
So who said didn't I was the last one and I said like blue some or maybe I don't think I was the last one.
I don't remember, but blue sounds right.
Yeah.
So, velvet. Velvet.
Peanut butter. Peanut.
Cookie.
Chocolate.
Chocolate.
Something
Velvet
like chocolate.
peanut.
Chocolate.
How did you get velvet blue?
That's a thing. Velvet blue. What is it? I don't know what that's from. But it's something.
Vanilla.
Vanilla it is. All right. So, and we've got a record of it now. We can just look back at this.
Yeah. Thanks, Hunter.
Good job.
Thanks, Hunter, for not being
We
here.
have a written record of the next one to use. Okay, so that's it for here. It ended up getting better, and we didn't stop believing. And
Thanks for joining us.
thanks for joining us.
Don't stop.
And we'll see you next week, hopefully live and in person, all of you, everywhere out there. And we'll get some new
It will be cooler.
Oh, yes.
Hopefully.
And then, once we get closer to like November, maybe we can do one out by the fire or something.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
We'll get the fire started right now. Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.
Don't
Make sure you
stop
follow us
believing.
and
Yeah,
subscribe.
follow us at all the things in the description below.